This is Daniel Gardner, aka Frivolous. I'm sitting in my studio with you in Berlin. Obviously, I've been getting like some feedback from the publicists and whatnot, but yeah, it seems to be being received as quite a monumental, maybe even a change of pace for the label. So yeah, I think people are pretty excited about having things change so drastically. I feel like there's kind of some trends that are starting to emerge, and I think things are changing a lot. Like since kind of this fundamentalist minimalism thing kind of has finally faded away, I think it's being replaced by a lot of music that brings in a lot of other influences, and I think that's why we're seeing albums like Caribou and even to go so far as to say like Coco Rosie and things like that that are incorporating electronic elements, be them traditional or not, but incorporating all these other elements with them too, like these very singer-songwriter elements and things that draw on, you know, experimental sound sources and stuff. So I think that things are just generally changing a lot. And I can't say that my album feels any more groundbreaking than any of these other ones that I've mentioned, but it feels like there's kind of a renaissance occurring right now in what role electronic music plays, what its primary purpose is, and so I'm happy to contribute to that in whatever way that I feel I can. And so I feel like this album does that. It kind of changes the role of electronic music a little bit and maybe brings it into a more domestic situation where it's not such just a club-oriented thing or like almost like a fundamentalist exercise in minimalism, let's say. I feel like it's starting to take on a lot more human characteristics with music. So I'm pretty happy about being involved and contributing my part in that movement.
Would you describe the album as experimental?
Well, for me, no.
People would, but
no. For me, I would actually say that from my background, which has been quite experimental, I think, by mainstream electronic music standards, for me, no. I would say it's more of a movement towards more of a movement towards the mainstream. But I think by a lot of other people's standards and a label as big as Cadenza's standards, perhaps it is a bit of a departure from their usual format. So I think from that perspective, yeah, it might be considered a bit of an experimental album in comparison to, say, some of the other stuff that's come out recently on that album, on that label. Not to say that their entire back catalog hasn't had moments of taking drastic risks.
It's not what you expect from Cadenza at all.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that there's going to be strong reactions to it, whether they're good or bad. I think I usually split people down the middle with my work, and usually half of them are the ones that love it to death, and the other half are the ones that think it's absolutely absurd. So I expect probably it will be more of the same. I don't really know exactly what their strategy was in signing a release like this. I mean, Luciano was supporting it. Like, I was talking with him while I was preparing the album, and he liked the last release that I did, the Couples Therapy 12-inch, which was last year. And then I kind of started sending him the rough ideas of how the album would go, like when it was about halfway finished, and he reacted really strongly in favor of it. So that was a big that was a major encouragement to me to like continue in that vein of inspiration and not think too strongly about what it was that they wanted or didn't want. You know, just the fact that he seemed to be completely in line with my inspirations just gave me that much more confidence to finish the record.
Were you surprised by that? Were you surprised that someone like Luciano would pick up on what you're doing?
To a certain extent, yeah, because I mean, I don't have like the tendencies to just make straight up dance tracks. And although for all intents and purposes of this album, it was a fine equilibrium between balancing something that flowed together as an album, but still making it functional enough for the DJs who make up, you know, a gross portion of Cadenza's faithful listeners and fans. So I knew that it had to be both a functional album, but I wanted to try and keep it as much as possible still functioning as an album, like, you know, from a listener's point of view. So to get back to the question, yeah, I think I digress here, but I was a little bit surprised. Yeah, definitely. I was pleasantly surprised. I was pleasantly surprised that he was so in line with my own vein of inspiration. So it was definitely a big help in keeping me inspired. I think that Cadenza's been flirting with a lot of really cool ideas in the last couple of years. Like, I can't say that I've been like a diehard fan of every record they've put out, but I think that for a lot of the same reasons that people criticize the label, saying that they just take these uncontextualized sounds like Peruvian goat herders and layer them on top of techno beats. You know, instead of seeing that as perhaps a gentrified way of making music, I saw it as a really inspiring opportunity to contribute to that and to take it to the next level, and to try and not just layer them on top like all of these diverse musical influences, but actually try and integrate them into a way that created an album that was both, you know, melodic enough to be soulful and enjoyable in a home setting, but also continue along this same vein of inspiration.
Were you taking inspiration from quite a lot of different sources then? Because obviously there's a load of different elements to the album, aren't there?
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I like doing a kind of sample collage. I really enjoy it because it brings in all of these emotions from different places. Like, I use a lot of samples based on old jazz records, based on blues and bluegrass and everything. And then there's a lot of classical influences too. There's the this adaptation of the Griboyedov waltz, which is this Russian waltz, which is the basis for the Nostalgia track. So yeah, there was like a lot of different influences, definitely coming from a lot of different ethnicities and a lot of different points in history. And they all kind of come together, interwoven, to create this tapestry, which ends up being, you know, one feeling throughout the album. One main theory of my work is to create contrast with different sample sources, and to play with the relationships that they might share or not share. So there's a lot of possibility when you work with samples and just like melodies that come from classical music, and you have all these different artillery in terms of tools at your disposal that you can work with to create a collage that is, you know, one piece of music.
Do you find yourself, when you're listening to music just for pleasure, do you find yourself always with one ear for a sample then?
Oh yeah, totally, all the time. As soon as I hear something, I immediately jot it down. I've actually spent like the last 2.5 months like going through this torrent of Russian music that actually has been collected by somebody on the internet, and it comprises like 5 gigabytes of MP3s, all super low quality and ranging everything from like 18th century classical Russian ballets to like weird modern stuff recorded by some kid and his like sampling his dog in Siberia or something like that. So I'm always like exploring new possibilities and new sources for inspiration, and especially sources for options to sample.
What's your setup for live?
I do live vocals and live keys. So I bring a MIDI controller with me, where I'm able to play all of my instruments from my laptop. And of course, they don't sound as good as a real synthesizer, but you know, they sound okay for all intents and purposes. And I also play with this crazy. Actually, I have it right here. This is the electromagnetic chef's knife, which has got some pickups on it. It's got a a jack on the other end, and then you can just plug it in and hack away at things, and it makes some crazy sounds which I resonate through effects and stuff on the laptop. And I sing into a red telephone, which I can also use to monitor everything, which is good because a lot of times the clubs have like pretty bad monitoring situations, and when you can't hear yourself sing, it's pretty much impossible to do it. So there's that, and then I'm inventing this thing that I was originally going to call the auto xylo, but I'm leaning more towards towards the name Delphine now. Yeah, it's not quite complete yet. But what it is, if you can see there, is it's a robotic xylophone with little arms on it, which play it. They're all on motors, and underneath is guitar pickups, so you can plug it in. Like there's the output, and then on the other side it's got a USB input, and it's powered, of course. So it's completely automated instrument that you can play with MIDI files, and you can trigger MIDI files, and then it'll actually play them out on 2 octaves of xylophone keys, and then it's like electric, like a Rhodes, like a Fender Rhodes. So you plug it into guitar effects and stuff like that. So I think when it's done, it should be pretty cool. It's pretty nerdy, but the reason why I'm leaning towards calling it Delphine instead of the auto xylo is because I kind of want it to take on like a personality. Like I would love to be able to play actually in a band and not just be the only person on stage, but I don't really have that luxury as an electronic musician, because it's like makes it like twice as expensive for people to like bring you to their club or whatever. So I'm kind of thinking it would be cool to have like this like secondary personality that I can kind of interact with on a level, but actually have like the computer that's kind of, playing these very like I have a feeling that my entire interaction with it will be very chaotic just because it's all home built, and yeah, I don't know, we'll see how it plays out. Of course, I don't want to like digress into doing something that just becomes more palatable because it's easier to communicate. So I'm trying to do things like build this so that I can communicate my concepts even stronger, both visually and musically at the same time. So hopefully people really understand that, okay, yeah, this is, this crazy dream of this guy's, and it just happens to be that I can dance to it and either like it or don't like it. So